Slash and grab. Hello, hackers and gentle hackers. Welcome. Oh boy, we've got a show for you today. I would like this to be the definitive technical story, the recounting, the recap of what has gone on with the ScreenConnect February 2024 vulnerabilities, their subsequent exploitation, their subsequent post-exploitation. I'm joined here today by my good friend, hacker, colleague, mentor, John Hammond. We are going to skip the introductions. We have a packed slide deck for everyone today. However, John and I, both of us do not have anything past the hour. We want to answer every single question that we can. If you can hang out, we can hang out until all the questions are answered. Otherwise, feel free to come and go as you please. But let's get right into it. Today on this very special episode of the Product Lab, which is not the Product Lab at all. It is a little bit. You'll see at the end here. I'm me, John's John. Let's kick it. We are covering the slash and grab vulnerabilities and exploitation, and we're covering hopefully what is the definitive technical story and timeline here as we saw the events unfold from the Huntress side. And so we've got roughly a 4-day timeline to cover that covers everything from the genesis of discovering the vulnerability, and even before that, the security bulletin from ConnectWise that kind of started this whole thing. We're going through the rollouts of hotfixes and what we've released in terms of detection guidance. We also then are going to cover what happened when the POC exploit dropped on this one and how we responded to that. And we're going to finish up here with some of the post-exploitation activities that we have seen thus far. So let's start me up here. How did this all begin? Well, it began in a lot of ways how it always begins, which is from a message from Jamie, the director of our our adversary tactics threat ops group. And Jamie, on the night of February 19th, saw the ConnectWise security bulletin come through. And I believe, and John, you can probably correct me, I think everybody kind of had a pit in their stomach when this one went down, because I believe that this one, just the nature of the vulnerability and kind of like the implied attack surface, without even looking into any of the specifics, might have been something to cause alarm. And like, I mean, you were in the room when this happened, so I think maybe you could confirm that.
Yeah, I'll color the picture just a little bit, but look, it's ScreenConnect, it's ConnectWise. It's a big thing used by hundreds, thousands, tons of managed service providers, small mid-market businesses. And when you have a vulnerability in the server, that potentially means, oh, maybe a trickle-down effect of maybe remote monitoring and management, right? When that's hit, that's a certain nightmare scenario because maybe that fans out to connected clients or endpoints and agents. And when we get this advisory coming out with a severity score of 10, the highest criticality you can get, we're getting a little bit worried. And if I may say, the timing here, this is about I think you're in Eastern time, Matt. Is that right?
Yes.
So 6 p.m. We're just slightly out of workday hours, so enough to be like, oh gosh, this again.
Calling the troops.
Yeah, let's get the Avengers together. But hey, quite a story, and please strap in for the ride here.
Yep. So Jamie puts the call out, and immediately from the genesis of this, we all kind of had the feeling that this is going to be a big one. But that begs the question, and this is for any of you budding offensive security researchers in the audience right now. Pay attention right now, because this is like an interesting part of the story, which is how does one find a 0-day, right? And so when we get the security bulletin from the actual like notification from, in this case, ConnectWise, but really kind of any software vendor like this, how do we find a 0-day? How do we do this? So the steps kind of look a little bit like this. So you take in the facts, and in this case, we look at the security bulletin and we realize that there's not a ton to go off of. We know that it's a high criticality vulnerability, but we don't know a ton about it. Now, the software vendors will generally put out some kind of very high level description of what the vulnerability is. In this case, we had 2 to go off of. So we had an authentication bypass using an alternate path or channel, and we had improper limitation of a path name to a restricted directory. This is in short form, path traversal. But that's not a lot to go on, right? So the second step is to take those facts as a starting point, and then, because the binary is always going to have the answer in this case, you take the newest version of the software, you take the oldest version, or not the oldest, but the older version of the software. Actually, in this case, it could have been the oldest version. You take the older version of the software and you crunch them together, you smush them together, and you see what happens. And as an optional step 3, you luck out completely because this is the .NET framework, and so that makes the decompilation and the identification of the 0 days a lot easier. But then you diff. And then when you diff the two software components, you take an educated guess as to what they fixed in the latest patch that they're saying, hey, this is a big one, you should fix it, and how to exploit it. And I highlight this specifically because decompilation of the .NET framework versus the disassembly of something like C or C++ or other code that kind of compiles down to native on the metal of the operating system architecture, there's a big difference here. And so that's like reading the difference between something like cuneiform, a symbolic language, and oh yeah, I know, right, John?
Oh, my mind for a second there.
I'm breaking out middle school level social studies here to teach about this one. Cuneiform, a primitive symbol based language versus something like the instruction manual of a toaster written in English, right? And the reason is because the code that you compile within the .NET framework runs in the common language runtime. And like without getting way too technical in the weeds, that means that it's a higher level abstraction than what you would see on the metal of the operating system. Now, what that means is that when we decide to diff, when we take the newer version and the older version and smush them together and see what the difference is, that means that we have easier reading to very quickly be able to determine what was patched and then infer what the patch actually fixed and how to exploit it. But we didn't actually even have to start with the decompilation here. As I understand it, our absolute mad scientist Caleb pointed out very astutely that there was a text file, the ASPX text file, for the setup wizard page within ScreenConnect. And when you diffed the setup wizard page, which is plain text, against the newest one, we found that there was a new check, and I'll move John a little bit out of the way to show that, already set up. So, okay. So he immediately says, and this is one of the reasons why I want to be Caleb when I grow up. He points this out immediately and says, I bet we can get to the setup page even if it's already set up before. And wow, what an observation at that point. So deep in the military lab, the secret military lab buried far beneath the Huntress HQ, the research begins and Caleb starts with this hypothesis, right? And again, for all of these security researchers, offensive security researchers, people who are running down 0 days, this is a really good workflow to start to identify holes in the .NET framework or holes in the code written in the .NET framework to find 0 days.
May I harp on this for just a quick moment here, Matt?
You absolutely may, John.
I think all of us, maybe to a certain extent, kind of saw that message and thought, oh, yeah, okay, for sure. I mean, that's interesting, but it almost seemed like a certain amount of disbelief. Like that, we thought we would be digging into the decompiled disassembly.NET bytecode to find something a little bit more leaked, a little bit more sexy hacker, not just the pure plain text ASPX file. And I do want to not to say foot stomp, because that's a thing that too many people say, but emphasize that because we'll come back to that a little bit later when we're telling the story. But I will note when we talk about, I see it in the chat, Tanner saying, surely it can't be that easy. That's where we just kind of kept digging, but it looked like that seemed to be one of the only deltas or the diffs that there were. So, yep. Hey, we'll keep cruising, Matt.
It can't be that easy. Oh, my sweet summer child. It could be that easy. For a little bit more on the decompilation side of the house, we then looked into the decompiled output. And this is a very busy piece of code. But basically what this means is that the newer version of the software looked for a more stringent, more specific string check against the setup wizard.aspx file. And so too long didn't read. The inference now is that, okay, well, if we were able to access the setup wizard with some kind of string that it wasn't expecting, there's a good chance that we can access the string or access the URI by giving it a string that it's not expecting. And that wouldn't necessarily be a problem because the check in that software is actually not too bad, except for the following quirk of .NET. This is a quirk how .NET handles URIs and string building. And so if there is a legitimate path to, let's say, setupwizard.aspx, then .NET will allow the user to request, setupwizard.aspx, and then add a slash and put literally anything after that slash. And so the slash in this case is forcing the string to be built in a certain way and interpreted by the server. And so the too long didn't read here is that all you would have to then do is put a slash and then follow it with anything. And I think, John, keep me honest here, I believe even just a slash will work in that case. Even for a server that has been completely set up, if you add a slash to the setupwizard.aspx file, that string building and checking mechanism is completely bypassed. And here we are staring down the loaded barrel of the ScreenConnect install screen. My goodness.
It is just the /.
Yes.
But we'll harp on that even more when we start to talk about our little nickname, how we might dub this vulnerability along the lines of a log4j or a proxy shell, but I don't want to spoil. I'll let you keep cruising, Matt.
And I have, and this is a completely exclusive photo of the exact moment that we found this vulnerability and found the subsequent exploit. I have an exact photo replica in emoji form of John and Jamie and Caleb when they found this. Now, the astute of you are probably wondering, hey, Matt, where were you when all of this went down? Well, I'll tell you, I was somewhere in the Caribbean on PTO. So I had absolutely no idea that any of this was happening. I was filled in later when I came back, but at about 9:24 Eastern time, Jamie says that the vulnerability and subsequent exploit is confirmed. We are currently standing by, and that so this is late at night at this point. But it's worth calling out that the time between the notification from ConnectWise and the full reproduction of the attack chain is measured in hours at this point. That's very important to note. So to recap, if we haven't beat this to death already, let's just recap here. So and this is kind of like, imagine that I'm stepping off the plane, coming back into to reality here, and I sit down at my desk and I'm asking, well, what's so bad about all of this? And this is basically the response that I was met with. One of the most popular remote access tools, which is used by thousands of MSPs and hundreds of thousands of clients worldwide, which it should not be left out, is frequently accessible on the public internet as an edge device, has a massive security flaw where if you just have line of sight to this thing and you can access it over HTTP or HTTPS and you append a slash to the setup wizard page or the setup wizard URI, it brings you back to the setup wizard as if it had not happened. And at that point, you as an unauthenticated attacker get to own the server. You get to say, I am the administrator now, meme from Captain Phillips. This is my username, this is my password, and you belong to me now. We try not to sound the alarm at Huntress unless it's absolutely warranted. This one was absolutely warranted. I think, I haven't been here for that long, John, but I think this is basically the worst that I've seen since coming to Huntress. You have more tenure here. Is this the worst one that you've seen in a general sense? I think there were a couple that are up to bat here for maybe the most pressing issue that we've ever seen unfold.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. So, hey, I'm over at like year 3.5 at Yale Huntress, and I've done through a couple of rapid response or that internal process that we like to call when we do the Avengers Assemble and we try to get everyone, hey, rowing in the same direction, playing in concert to everything that we might be able to do. I don't know if I would go so far as to say that this is the most insane, sky is falling, severe thing between oh, sure, Log4j, Exchange, Hafnium, Kaseya VSA, Print Nightmare, blah, blah, blah. Laundry list of stuff that we've chased the ambulance for. But I think this one has a super specific and peculiar case, is that it was so stinking easy, trivial, embarrassingly simple. So normally we're all about total transparency, threat intelligence, indicators of compromise, detection engineering efforts immediately, right off the bat. This was the first time I think we were a little bit tight-lipped, kind of holding ourselves back as to everything that we wanted to talk about. And then I think for a lot of us, that pains me because we always want to be getting actual actionable intelligence out there and not just say we're monitoring the situation, waiting for something to happen. We'll keep up to date with. I like to immediately bring you something of value, not say it's in waiting. This was the first time I think we've had to do that, but we'll dig into that and just how this all unfolds next.
Yeah.
And if I may say, as we transition, look, everything we've shown you so far, I'm totally going to acknowledge you already know. This is information that we've all been screaming about for a week now, but I think we can start to dig into what we got to do and what Huntress and how we responded, and a little bit more of the behind the scenes that we haven't quite shared yet. So, with that, Matt, take it away.
Absolutely. Bad to the bone, our immediate action response. So, meanwhile, at the Huntress headquarters, the Kyle signal goes up. The non-copyright infringing Kyle signal goes up. And at the Huntress HQ, our fearless leader sounds the alarm. All hands on deck. Kyle comes in at 10:30, but an hour later, after our exploitation has been proven, and says this is a tonight issue, not a tomorrow issue. So if just in case there was any ambiguity about the gravity of the situation, Kyle himself came through at 10:30 p.m. and said, we've got to put the call out right now. We put out our first blog post on the night of February 19th that has a very, I would say, enough information to convey that this is a big problem, but it really does not have any, it doesn't for sure does not have the technical proof of concept for exploitation. It doesn't have any detection guidance. It does not have any kind of like specifics, IOCs or anything like that. But we are saying, for the love of everything that's good, patch this like right now. Get out of bed and patch this. If you run an MSP with ScreenConnect, like this is worth getting out of bed for. And again, we try not to do that because CVE fatigue is real. And I'm the first one to look at a new CVE and roll my eyes and be like, come on, like this is not that big of a deal. This was a big deal for our customer base. This was a big deal. And I think, nice summary from Kyle there that said, I can't sugarcoat it. This shit's bad. And here is where this starts to unravel some of the stuff that's happening behind the scenes, because we are not about to just we have the bias for action at Huntress. We are not allowed to let this kind of unfold and get away from us. And so our detection guidance, so shout out to the detection engineers and all the work that they put in on this one to corral and wrangle. And that's in joint effort with you, John, and Caleb, and everybody who made the proof of concept exploitation to get the technical guidance on what to look for if this has been exploited. One of the really nice things is that a lot of the rules that we had already in place would catch technical exploitation like this. And so what we included in here are a few IOCs. We're going to actually go into these a little bit in more detail in a little bit. But yes, at the detection engineer layer on the evening of February 20th, we throw all of our detection guidance into a blog and we send that out. This is one example of the Windows event, the 4663 event that happens as a result of exploitation, where there is this file that is written with this weird GUID name as a result of exploitation. John, if you want to cover this a little bit more in detail about what we're actually looking at here, I think this is a really interesting technical indicator.
Yeah, I can chat about this, and I will temper expectations in that, look, the clear smoking gun is the access log from the web server, IIS, whatever, and at whatever shape that takes. That's not always present, though. Given some configurations of ScreenConnect, that is hard to drill down into. However, this is a breadcrumb. I don't know if all accuracy, it's not as high fidelity as the IIS log indicator itself, but when we have new changes made to the user's database or configuration file for ScreenConnect that would be performed in creating a new administrator user with our / setup wizard factory reset trick, it stages some temporary files into a temporary location, and then we'll end up merging that into a actual users.xml file. So one thing that we might be able to do, if we're willing to acknowledge that sometimes maybe that'll fire in other scenarios, I'm not 1,000% clear, but it's a strong indicator and enough to key off of there has been some new activity and it's being staged in the temporary directory. We're getting some access masks in the mix. We're seeing that it is writing and appending to a file, doing that due diligence, and that at least clues us in on the activity. And that, given that there was no conversation about this exploit or mitigations or things yet out there yet, this was one of the best things we thought we could offer for trying to do the right thing on defense and detection before the POC is dropped.
And then immediately following some of the research that we publish in the blog, we then turn around and Matt Anderson from our detection engineering team also opens a PR into the main Sigma HQ repository. If you're not familiar with this, Sigma is open source. So Sigma is we use the schema of Sigma in the Huntress detection engine, but there is itself a completely separate open source Sigma repository of all of these rules. And so this is just one other example of, hey, like we're covering down on our own detections for our partners, but there's more to the story here, and we got to arm everybody with the knowledge to look after and identify this kind of exploitation. And so Matt opens up a PR into the open source Sigma repository and pulls a bunch of rules, detection criteria, including a few of the ones that we're going to cover in the technical deep dive section here. So I want to say, like, this is one of those instances where I don't know if we've ever done this before. We might have done something like this before, but again, hats off to the detection engineering team for this one, going above and beyond, and not just making sure that the partners of Huntress are taken care of, but that anybody who needs some kind of open source rule to look at as a reference to identify exploitation can go here to find this as well. And so we've just got some love from the Sigma maintainers of just pulling these rules in, and so that was really cool. Very cool moment of kind of like collaboration in the community. So I just want to shout out to the Sigma maintainers as well. So thank you for keeping that project going, and thank you for accepting the PR. We really appreciate that. Great memes too, by the way. Great memes. Same thing, Florian Roth, of course, comes out and says that after we have published our detection guidance, he went ahead and built Yara rules out of this as well. So whereas Sigma is for the logs and seam side of the house, Yara, of course, is the file scanner side of the house, and we build rules to look for. And I don't know why this never occurred to me, but like he built a rule to look for the web log itself and find any instances of the setup wizard with the trailing slash. And I was like, that's so smart. I didn't realize that you could point Yara, and why wouldn't you be able to? But I guess it didn't occur to me that you could point it at like a log file and see, and basically use it as a regex against that log file. I thought that was really cool. So kudos to Florian again for that as well. And again, these are fantastic open source repositories. So he's got, his massive repository of signatures and rules for Yara as well. And then we get a breakthrough. And so our staff mad scientist, Dr. John Hammond of Jurassic Park fame, has the bright idea that says, do we have any thoughts for renaming the setup wizard to something where it's not, and this is because of the way Windows handles files and would handle something in the ScreenConnect instance, we can basically nullify that file so that it's not an interpreted file within ScreenConnect. And so all we would have to do in that case is change it from ASPX, which would be interpreted by the .NET ASP.NET server. We would just rename it to nope or foo or bar or something like that. And if you cut off, you basically defang the setup wizard at that point. And the idea is that after the setup is done, should anybody really need to access the setup wizard? Well, no. So let's just cut that off completely. And so with a little bit of experimentation, John finds that this is a viable option. All we would need to do is basically reach in and Indiana Jones style, we take the old file, we take the new file and swap it out. And that is exactly what we did the evening of February 20th, where Dr. Hammond, the mad scientist, comes up with this idea of the vaccine. We've seen this before in things like the CACbot, resurgence of CACbot and the first major wave of CACbot. But another example of just where the tech of Huntress kind of shines. I mean, we were able to reach into every single instance where there was some kind of ScreenConnect server and swap these files out. And I'm not going to say that prevented exploitation, but what I can say is that, across the board, that's going to reduce drastically the attack surface of this one. So there's edge cases that we can talk about, but like this is one of those moves where it takes the attack surface of the major exploitation and reduces it very, very, far down from where it is. So John, kudos to you, sir, and kudos to the engineering team. I know JDF had a hand in that. I know that Rob had a hand in that. So just another like brilliant team effort to try to get the vaccine rolled out.
Thank you.
I just another instance of just fantastic teamwork and fantastic collaboration.
Yeah. Can I color the picture just a little bit? Because the
Please do.
Inspiration on that and the CrackBot vaccine, other things that we've done, the Kaseya VSA ransomware vaccine, we're always trying to think of those clever ways to speed up and help partners so that they can sleep better at night. And I like and I hope to think that some of that tech is enabled with those ideas. Not to try to put a flag in the ground or claim, oh, that was my idea or something silly. But no, I just you think about PHP for the nerds and geeks in the room, right? PHP will run server-side code to be processed and handed out by a web server. .NET's going to do something similar. And if that flaw and mistake is in just that file, again, super easy, plain text file. We didn't have to decompile or get into any C# classes or whatever. We could just remove the file, rename the file so it had different extension and wasn't going to be evaluated, or put that blocker and mitigation in place. And I will go out and say, look, maybe a smart idea is to take the piece of the patch that actually mattered there, the diff that we were looking at earlier. Let's put that in place. So in a certain way, we've supplied a micro patch to all the Huntress partners. And I got to say, from, people and the person on the team that kind of helps keep that moving, poke the bear on that front, that is an awesome feeling, because that was before we knew in the wild exploitation was coming. That was before the proof of concept was dropped. And it just, I don't want to get on a soapbox, but it felt really, really good to try and drive forward with that good thing to do. With that, I know, hey, we're cruising to get into the next slides. We'll keep going.
Absolutely. The waiting is the hardest part. We've got ethical questions and questionable ethics here. As the detection engineering and research team kind of waits, we're watching the clock now. We've got our proof of concept recreated. Our detection guidance has been released. We've got the Sigma rules that are public. We've got collaborations going on with Florian and the Sigma maintainers. The vaccine has been administered. We've micropatched, and yet we are all watching the clock, because at this point there has been no public proof of concept released yet. And yet that's when we started hearing the ticking, the tick, 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 boom. And lo and behold, we have our first public proof of concept coming from Watchtower Cyber. I had actually never heard of this place before this, so congratulations, I guess. That is at 1:27 a.m. on February 21st. That is when the public proof of concept is released. John, I've got a question for you. Well, actually, I have a question that I'm going to give you to ask to me. What is the most important part of comedy? So ask me that question.
Matt, what is the most important part of comp?
Yeah, exactly. So
you got me there. You got me.
The most important part of comedy is also the most important part of proof of concept exploitation. I don't think we have enough time to harp on this, so I will stand up on my tiny little soapbox and say it's all in the timing in proof of concept release. I am an offensive security researcher. I have been on the other side of this fence, and I have once in my life been the guy who is looking at trying to publish research under my own name to kind of like, propel the name, get my name out in front of other people. And I understand that this is not the open source tools is bad debate. I don't believe that. Nobody at Huntress believes that open source tools are the enemy here. But what would you do if you had nothing to prove is, I guess, the question I want to ask. And what would you do if you knew that releasing the proof of concept in a mass exploitative edge vulnerability like this would cause an amount of havoc that you probably can't even wrap your head around? That's the question I want to ask in this case. None of us believe that holding in proofs of concept forever indefinitely is going to make better security. Obviously, that's not the case. But I want to bring up the point here. Timing is everything. That's stepping off the soapbox now. That's where I'll leave it. That kind of, in a way, forced our hand at Huntress. And so we had our blog about the details of the technical exploitation written up, but we were not releasing it at that point because we were keeping it close to our chest, because we were not about to, in Kyle's words, hand the loaded gun over to the adversaries at the point at which mass exploitation would have been the most damaging. And so when we saw the first public proof of concept go out, that is when we decided to release our exploitation technical breakdown, which we will now go into. And so let's rewind it a little bit, resuming from the intro where we saw John and Jamie and Caleb recreating the exploits. So we were here, remember? So we've got setup wizard / literally everything. But one of the interesting indicators here is the creation of this user.xml file. John, can we walk through a little bit like what we're looking at here in an IOC sense as a result of exploitation? This takes place. So what are we looking at?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So, C program files, x86, ScreenConnect, app underscore data. Bear in mind that is your chosen default installation path. Maybe that's modified, maybe that's mutable, but that is the application home base for ScreenConnect. Inside there is this user.xml file, which would normally outline all of the activity and all the things that are kind of configured and seen and observed for user accounts on that ScreenConnect server. Now, when we perform this trick, when we use this CVE 2024-1709 threat attack vector, that user.xml file gets clobbered. It gets nuked. It's just reset because, again, it is a factory reset, the words I keep using, to just white card a new admin account in, and all the other users are gone away. Now that's a little bit interesting because you can see a couple of the creation date attributes and properties in that XML. You could probably determine, hey, when this got hit, and the email address that they supply, and the username, and the password hash that they use, which is going to be dependent on the machine key and decryption crypto stuff. But you could then see if they're doing any further activity or if they've just created the account and given themselves the access. You see sort of a null looking timestamp for last activity date, last login date, 00101. That's weird. That just means they created the account but haven't logged in yet. So if you happen to see your user.xml file just revert to this state of only one admin being present with random letters, as we've seen for some of the post exploitation, that is the smoking gun. That's the criminal on the crime scene still there that, hey, we've been compromised.
Yes, and so that very fittingly, when the user definition file has been replaced, well, that means that one, all of the previous users cannot log in anymore because they've been completely nuked. The user database has essentially been nuked. And two, you're going to know the username that they decided to plop right in there. So yeah. Now the question has been asked. Okay, so I'm an attacker. I have set up, I've gotten to setup wizard. I have injected my own administrator account in there. But how do I pivot that into RCE? Right. So like there's another layer here that we have to defeat because we're basically just like a user, an admin user, but a user nonetheless of the actual web server at that point, just the web application. We haven't actually touched the server itself. So how do we pivot this into RCE? Well, the Metasploit framework module that was merged in many days after the original exploitation shows this pretty clearly. So for better or for worse, code execution is basically built into ScreenConnect into the web app. And so there is essentially a way that you can define an ASHX, so very similar to an ASPX file, a text file that gets interpreted at the time of access by the .NET framework and then executes that code. You can write that code, you can land that on the server, and then you can request the server endpoint to run that code. And so the TLDR here is that you can basically write whatever C# code that you want. And I've included a couple of code snippets here, but like one of the big ones here is that this opens the field for thread injection. And this particular, the highlighted box here is a classic thread injection pattern for create thread, an internal thread. So we're not going to a remote process for this. We're injecting into the process itself. And that means that unfortunately, if you decide to use this tradecraft and inject a thread into the ScreenConnect instance itself, you do not, as an attacker, have to go outside of your process to perform any post-exploitation activity. And that is a scary, scary thought. However, I will say that lazy cybercriminals are lazy, and we're going to see how lazy here in a moment, but just keep that in mind. You don't have to go outside of the process to be able to run any post-exploitation. And certainly now that we have the ability to land a meterpreter shell and inject it into the process itself via create thread, you for sure can just live in that indefinitely. A couple other technical details here. To do this, you have to land an extension file that kind of defines how the ASHX file will be used. And then the code of Metasploit shows this very plainly. You upload the new file, the new extension here, and then you just trigger it by requesting it. Simple, simple, simple. And by the way, this is also on Linux. Back several versions. So this is, I believe this is an out of support. This is end of life, but there are instances of ScreenConnect that run on Linux. And so the team over at Metasploit, the maintainers of the Metasploit framework were able to develop the proof of concept so that it would also work on Linux. I say that's astounding. And that's all. I guess I'll leave it there. And then a little follow-on point here. What about the zip slip? What about this path traversal? We've mentioned so far just the authentication bypass. We've paid no attention to this other vulnerability that came along with it. And the decompilation of the patch files, the patch diffing, allowed us to find the zip slip as well. But I think the long story short here is that this is bad, but by itself, it's not as bad as the authentication bypass. You need administrative credentials and the ability to access the extensions feature of ScreenConnect. And so this is less severe on its own. And I would even say it's almost obviated by the authentication bypass. If you can perform the authentication bypass, you have as much access as you need to do anything. You own the server at that point. This is an alternate way to own the server, but it has a couple of prerequisites. It's not unauthenticated, so you can't just roll up and own the ScreenConnect server, essentially. I don't know if we want to spend a lot of time on more of the details here, John, but I thought that was just kind of, we paid a lot of attention to the authentication bypass. We don't pay a lot of attention to the path traversal here.
If I were a shady threat actor adversary and hacker, putting on my hacker hat, the authentication bypass could be leveraged to upload a evil extension, as I've sort of colloquially called it. And without using the zip slip vulnerability, just as you mentioned, Matt, you could still get code execution. However, in some scenarios where maybe a license wasn't enacted or the just active running subscription in some cases, then it would not be weaponized in the evil extension. You wouldn't be able to add that to get code execution. So a threat actor and hacker might then use the zip slip vulnerability, the second in the mix here. So I will still say that's a damning vulnerability. It is code execution.
Absolutely.
But you need to have the door opened by credentials and admin access, which the authentication bypass gives you. So just nuance in that conversation.
And with that, we turn now with the proof of concept out in the wild with all of our detection guidance already published and kind of the team now collectively bracing against the inevitable incoming of the wave of exploitation and post-exploitation activity. But I'll tell you that some heroes emerged from this one. And so whilst the rest of the world was asleep, and we can see the US team is all up there except for you, John. I know you don't sleep. You can't lie to me. I know that you've never slept a day in your life. The Australians, what ended up happening here is that the Australians SOC team and the UK SOC team both turned to each other and collectively said, let's fuck some hackers up. And then they said jinx because they said it at the same time. And it was a wonderful moment of camaraderie. But in that case, when I woke up on the morning of February 23rd, I woke up to this, and it was basically in copy editing and on its way out the door. And John and I both agree here. This, I think, is like the crowning achievement in everything that Huntress was able to provide here, because this is like, and this is all on the SOC for hunting all of this down and squashing the hackers and making examples out of them. And we were able to put this out into the community and say, this is some of the stuff that you should be looking for. This is like a massive comprehensive guide on the post-exploitation activity that we've seen as a result of this slash and grab, which we had now, Matt Anderson had come up with the title by this point. So we were running with slash and grab. And so that all goes out to the SOC teams of the UK and Australia, putting on the sunglasses and saying, deal with it. And please read the blog for this one. There's so much good info in the blog, but among other things that are going down as a result of this exploitation, we see something that initially kind of worried us, but we kind of were able to reason through and figure out it wasn't as severe as it may be. I mean, no instance of ransomware is a good thing for sure. But we see Lockbit 3 deployed in environments after exploitation. And of course, following the context of, the Lockbit takedowns from, recent history, we were for sure kind of worried about that, because we were like, what if this is Lockbit at it again? Lo and behold, come to find out, we reverse engineer, we take a look at this. It's not as bad as it originally appears. This is what we were able to determine, that this was the leaked version of Lockbit. So it's not necessarily that Lockbit themselves were running it. They could have, we don't know. This was probably just some kind of unaffiliated threat actor. But again, we can't say that with certainty. So it's some kind of threat actor using the leaked version of the Lockbit ransomware. And so if I move John out of the way there, that is the instance, the parent-child process tree that lands from ScreenConnect executing lb3.exe. We see anti-forensics classic. Oh, baby, the Windows event util clearing the application logs. How are we going to find them now? Interesting observation by Max, the director of our SOC. Something that he found interesting was that there was the same post-exploitation enumeration script run across multiple instances, multiple clients, trying to find the accesses that the highest level of access that every ScreenConnect instance in those particular environments was set at. And so his kind of like hypothesis here is that they had so many accesses that they needed to triage effectively. It's like a red teamer waiting for their shells to come back, and then it just starts raining shells all of a sudden. Well, what do? You've got to quickly triage and figure out which ones you want to go after first. And that is just an example of this. This is PowerShell using a variable assignment to invoke a web request back to what is probably a web server that they control, just with the username. So a little kind of quirky enumeration thing here. Other things here, that's another example of just like oh yeah, that's right. This is a coin miner, man. I'm like you burned one of the most powerful 0 days in recent history on rolling out a coin miner, and
Got to get that Monero.
It reminds me of when the Mandiant Twitter account was like hacked, or however that went down, and like instead of just kind of squatting on their accesses of one of the most powerful security companies on earth, they chose to just like hawk crypto. I'm like, you guys don't deserve your accesses. Honestly, you are not worthy foes if you think that running coin miners as a result of this is the best possible use of your 0 day vulnerability. All right, I got
hey, let me say, I'll put a little devil's advocate. If we're getting popped by an exclamation point or a /, maybe crypto miners are the threat that we deserve.
Yeah, that's not that. We're not fighting the A team here, I guess, is how it comes out. Oh, interesting one. I love this one. Google Chrome remote desktop being used as a secondary implant for an RMM or a RAT as a follow-on mechanism of persistence. Now, that itself is really cool, I think. But the coolest part of this is that the community came alive and said, hold up, we have never seen that before. And then there was kind of a counter to that conversation where like Greg, Laughing Mantis, and a few other people were like, well, there goes my favorite method of persistence. So I'm like, oh man, we got him. And that kind of stuff just from COD and 4K, from being the red teamer on the other side of that, it just like it made me so happy. And I'm just, hey guys, like, life of a red teamer, figure out the accesses, figure out your new method of persistence. But I wanna like roll this all up with saying that Dre, I think, wrote this passage, and if he didn't, I apologize. It was somebody on the SOC, but basically saying that like most of the post-compromise activities that we've documented here are not novel, they're not original, they're not outstanding, they're not sophisticated. This is like the quintessential lazy hackers are lazy, right? And so another comment here, which I love, again, as a former, or I guess maybe still red teamer, cracks me up that going through a bunch of training where you think of like even things like RTO by Rostamaus has tradecraft that's more sophisticated than what we see here. And just so the idea that people are going through all this training and learning all this OPSEC and tradecraft, and then this is what we actually see threat actors doing. And I think that conversation is so important to have because it allows red teamers to kind of like calibrate where they need to be in terms of fighting against the blue teamers to make them better. This is what cybercrime looks like at the small to medium business level. It may not look like this everywhere, but this is for sure what it looks like to us. Lazy cyber criminals that are enabled by the great work of the offensive security researchers that came before them. Click a button, get an access, install a coin miner, and then don't know what to do with themselves. And the more sophisticated of them roll out ransomware, but the point remains that this is what we're seeing on the endpoint. So now I want to start to close this out here with new hotness that I think was added to the slide deck maybe 10 minutes before we went live here. And I want to say that like we're not wasting a crisis here. And for sure, this is bad, right? But like the innovation and kind of we're using this as kind of like a North Star, a compass, if you will, to point us in the right direction. And so this is and this is where the product lab comes in. So this is a very special episode of the product lab, but this is the product lab. So if you want to see what we've been working on behind the scenes, this happened as of like 10 minutes ago, basically, or 10 minutes before going live. This is the early stages of developing some kind of awareness about what we can maybe generalize as the applications that our partners use. And for this instance, ScreenConnect specifically, we're now looking at the instances of ScreenConnect callback servers, where they're going, how many there are in a partner environment, and using that to calibrate our detection and response efforts, right? And so the idea here is that Rogue ScreenConnect, Rogue RMM, the same thing we've been talking about in the Tradecraft Tuesday of January, the same thing we've been talking about all these years about just knowing which RMMs are alive and kicking in your environment and knowing which ones are not supposed to be there. This is the very early seedling that's sprouting to provide us more situational awareness about that happening. And so this is a little bit, Chris, our CTO, developed this basically on the fly, right? And so this is the seedlings of a new feature that we're rolling out here. And I think Max put it really, really well. This is about ScreenConnect. This is not solving every single rogue RMM. That's okay. This is value, I think, provided to our partners, right? This is just a little bit more information that we have now that we didn't have before that we can use to protect them. And so we wanted to include that to say that like we have not wasted the crisis here. We have taken the lessons that came from this and said, hey, what if we were able to tell which ScreenConnect instances were not supposed to be in that environment? And I would like to say, as the guy that was in the Caribbean for most of this, and I got to basically just step back off the plane and look at all the work that the team had done. John, you're the humblest dude on the planet, so you don't have to do this, but I want to recognize my teammates. I want to recognize Huntress for this one. I think we really kind of nailed this one in a lot of ways. And so the 4 areas that I think we nailed this very, very briefly have to do with people, have to do with our teams, our cross-department collaborations, our detection engineers, our security researchers, and that's not even to mention all of the like marketing and PR and everybody and channel managers and getting the word out, publishing the blogs at 1 a.m, responding to the new information, staying up, burning the midnight oil, which I know you did, John. I know Caleb did. I know Jamie did. I know every team in this place was able to do that. It's the people at Huntress that I think made the difference in this one. There's no AI. There is no automated security solution that's going to do what I saw unfold around me as this kind of, started to develop. 2, platform. We kind of talked about this already, but being able to, in a very specific instance, being able to reach in to our partners' environments and grab a file and swap it out for another file to do like a little micro patch, absolutely amazing. We own the tech stack, and that allows us to do that. And so we can stay flexible, stay malleable, and then pick up some kind of critical activity and then apply it across all of the scale of our partners to better protect them. I've already kind of mentioned this collaboration, not only just the inter department collaboration that I saw, but collaboration with the community. Just fantastic responses to our original detection blogs, but then people taking that and running with it. The Sigma HQ crew, Yara Rules from Florian, just like a bunch of security practitioners, defensive, offensive, taking this and running with it and just collaborating with us. And also some of the other parties that I think we're not really supposed to mention because of kind of the secrecy around it of just kind of like who we were talking to, who knew what, when, but just lots of collaboration, lots of, hey, how is this unfolding? Hey, what are you working on here? Here's some rules for you. Here's some IOCs. And I want to end with restraint. I believe the greatest show of strength is knowing when not to strike. And I think that we nailed that one this time. And it's, again, like I said, this is not the conversation of open source tools, offensive security research, and the like are bad. That is not what I want everybody to walk away from this part specifically thinking. But like I said, John, it's all in the timing. And I think maybe we can start to have the conversation about if there is the possibility that releasing a proof of concept could do untold damage in the short term, but eventually help everybody out in the long term. What is the calculus of that ethical choice? And so that is what I want to leave. I believe that Huntress, and again, I get to say this because I was on the plane for this whole thing. I was in the Caribbean. I had no part in the decisions of this. So I want to recognize my team for the restraint that you all showed. We could have hurled that proof of concept into the void, and we didn't. And I am so happy we didn't. And that's all I'll say about that.
May I politely sprinkle in just a little bit?
You may,
I
John.
don't want to. I don't want to do the humble brag, and I know that I'm on the soapbox. But I had tried to share just a message in our kudos chat or our internal hey Slack Huntress when we can appropriately pat each other on the back for hey you crushed it, we did awesome work. And I had shared some of the communication that we had with other teams because it's no secret. Hey Huntress, we're working with some of the big dogs. Like hey, sometimes we've got other agencies or law enforcement or military government folks or crews that are tracking this big internet breaking stuff. And there was some communication that we had because we were trying to let them know of like, these people need to patch. These people, we need to get the messaging out. And it's like, as we mentioned, 8, 10, 9, midnight on a Friday. And well, the one that sticks out to me is because we could see the conversations where they're saying like, hey, we don't know how much we're going to be able to realistically accomplish. We know a whole lot of other folks are really doing stuff on the weekends. And candidly, that team, our team, as they said, does not kind of jump into the fight on weekends. And that one just struck a chord with me because I had the epiphany and realization, holy crap, we've done so much incredible work with everything that we've tried to navigate and walk these tightropes with people, platform, restraint. Uh, I just had a real moment of like, man, we are obsessed with just doing the right thing. And that felt good. And I try to say that as humbly as I can, just as John, not as Huntress, but that was a good feeling. So I hope I can share that at the very least.
I am willing to believe that without Huntress excuse me, try this again. I'm willing to believe that without Huntress intervention, there may be companies that would have been ransomed by now that may have been wiped off the face of the earth, right? Like that's the level of catastrophe that we were kind of talking about here. And so that's the level that I want to recognize for the team and the damage that we've prevented in that case. And we'll close. We've got the Neighborhood Watch program. I mean, this is for anybody that wants to sign up for it. I don't like doing the promo stuff. I get very uncomfortable with it. You know me. So sign up for the Neighborhood Watch program. And I am told it's the easiest trial you'll ever run. But I want to really end with this. This is not over. All right. We don't get to pat ourselves on the back and ride off into the sunset on this one. There are still clients that are unprotected. There is going to be another one of these. We have another name that we're going to keep close hold for the day that something else like this happens because it was such a banger little quippy name, but we decided to not go with that. We went with Slash and Grab, but there was another one that we have. The fact that we have that on reserve should tell you enough that we believe that this is going to happen again. This is not over. And so I just want to put the call out to everybody who is an IT administrator and everybody who's got some stake in a company that's using ScreenConnect, everybody at ConnectWise. We commend you for keeping, vigilance. This isn't over. We're all in the fight together. And I just hope that, we've raised the shield as much as we can possibly raise it for right now. There's still more to do, but we've got your back. And we just wanted to say that. And with that, I know we've got 5 minutes, but I want to make sure that we've got all of the time for question and answer that we can possibly do. And like I said, I can hang out. John, you said you can hang out. So let's go ahead. And if I actually, let me hit up standby here so I can open up Zoom again and get back to the Q&A.
I've been trying to chip away at some text-based answers,
Thank you
both
so
in the
much.
chat and both in the Q&A. But hey, no, man, thank you for helping drive the show here. And I do really hope for anyone tuning in that there was some good value in all that we got to offer and show here for you.
And now I think we can like unpin me in terms of like presentation so that we can just get back to the chat here, and so John and I can be on the same thing.
Production.
All right, let's see. Let's see if we got the Q&A. Let's see here. See, you're typing an answer to that one, John. How many of the issues that you see at Huntress are due to unpatched systems or code weaknesses or misconfigurations? How prevalent is vulnerability exploitation as a precursor to some broader attack? That's a phenomenal question. Wow. I guess why not all? Why not both? Why not all the things you just said, right? How prevalent is vulnerability exploitation? This one happens to be particularly severe because it's an edge device, right? It's usually accessible on the public internet. And it was a exploiting public facing applications if you want to go by the MITRE technique. But this one was particularly bad. But yes, like misconfigurations, RDP just kind of left open to the internet. We see that all the time. Weak passwords on of RDP sessions, right? We see that all the time. VPNs that don't have two-factor authentication that have easily guessable passwords. We see that all the time. So yes, there's like misconfiguration is killer, right? And that even extends to once you're past the edge, once you're past the perimeter, like misconfigurations also are a part of it, but also just like the password.xlsx file left around with credentials in it, like that kind of stuff. We see that all the time as well. So yes, like every now and then we see one of these big red ball kind of like edge device exploitation POCs, and that is pretty bad. But we see lots of misconfiguration as well that allows exploitation and post exploitation.
While we have a lull, I see one question in the chat, so I can take that aloud because it'll be a little bit faster than typing. And I'm curious if others in the conversation want to chime in here. I was thinking, where is it? Jerry Arthur had said, this seems like it could have been worse than the Kaseya VSA ransomware attack, but Kaseya didn't have a patch available. What do you think was worse? This is let me politely answer with, hey, Kay, we're walking a tightrope on discussing vendors, but I'll at the same time, look, I think you're right. And the impact and severity is kind of equivalent. This is an impacted RMM, remote monitoring and management solution, that has the one-to-many threat of you poison the roots of the tree, all the branches die, server fan out to clients. The difference, the delta between this scenario and that scenario was timing. The secret to comedy, because ConnectWise in this current world event, they got out in front of it. We were properly getting the patch out because, hey, we could dig into and analyze this and get the messaging out. I gotta say, from Kaseya VSA days, it was out of left field. Absolute surprise. Servers just started popping and getting exploded, whatever. That is really the delta in my mind and how we could respond and react to it. But I think you're right, Jerry. It sounds like all the same characters, all the same set, the same plot, just when the show ran.
Yeah, it's not one for one, but man, it rhymes. History doesn't repeat. It certainly rhymes though.
What else we got? Okay, now Q&A is popping off.
Yeah, there we go. What classes or courses would you all recommend for learning how to do what you all do at Huntress? Oh my goodness.
So there is this YouTube channel from some guy with
plus one. So all right, so like this is it's a multifaceted discipline. I mean, like, and the cool thing about like, and this is one of the reasons why I love working at Huntress, everybody's got like an overlapping skill set, which is really cool because, like, for example, I don't know the first thing about Mac OS research, but Stuart, our Mac OS researcher on staff, is like an actual wizard when it comes to that. So like I'm scared. I'm like shaking in my boots when it comes to Mac OS stuff, and he's like, "No, I got you, man." On the flip side, I can play Active Directory like a fiddle, but like he doesn't know that stuff. So like we help each other out in that regard. And if you take that and apply it across every single like instance of a position in the security researcher kind of department, we all have overlapping skill sets. And so what I would say is, like, you of course have to start with the fundamentals, and that's, networking, some systems administration. I'm personally, I come from a Windows sysad and network admin background, and then pivoted that into offensive security research, right? So it's a lot about the fundamentals, and then just like the big thing is, like, I love to tell people, just let your curiosity let you lead you, right? So let your curiosity lead you. If you start to pick things apart, if you're interested in ransomware, start to learn how to reverse engineer. If you're interested in malware analysis in a general sense, start to learn how to pick apart malware in a general sense. But just keep letting your curiosity guide you. And that will allow you to nerd out about some specific area. And then there's a Musashi quote that I always like to revisit, which is that when you know the way broadly, you'll see it in everything. And so when you start to form expertise in one area, it's going to start to bleed into the other areas of infosec as well. And I think that's about, I can't give you like courses or anything like that. Like I have no idea. Everybody's different. Everybody's going to have their own path, but like let your curiosity be the guide on that one. John, I don't know if you have anything to add in that one, or we could just keep rolling.
No, you were perfect and took the words right out of my mouth, Matt.
Let's see. Where'd you get your Linux t-shirt, John?
I don't know, to be honest. This came from a friend, Trevor. But look, hey, yeah, if folks haven't seen it, the wording says born to be root, not born to reboot. And that's so cute.
Nice. So recommendation on how to protect computers with ScreenConnect agent installed, third-party vendor requiring the agent on one of our managed machines. Any Windows firewall magic to be done, maybe a script to run against the machine that checks the ScreenConnect server version and then makes a decision whether to allow communication. I don't know if we're in the position to be giving like specific advice for anybody's specific instance because we don't know. We don't know your setup in a specific sense like that. So I don't know. I'm struggling. Let me think about that one for a bit. We can maybe put a pin in that one.
My goodness. Q&A, questions flowing in. Are there plans for Huntress clients to be able to query their data or even create detection rules for their own environment? As far as I'm aware, currently there's only process insights to review surrounding the alerts. I think I can say there is something on the roadmap, and that might be the end of my leash.
Yep. Yeah, we don't like to put ourselves in the position where we say something in a recorded webinar and then we've got to like, oh shoot, that wasn't on the road. So,
but there are efforts being worked.
If this has shown anything, it's that like we got things in the, we got, you know, irons. I almost said tires in the fire, which is not the right, not even close to. We got a whole tire fire on this one.
If we want to help our customers to determine the impact of the exploit of CW ScreenConnect in their environment, how can we get a copy of the exploit to help them test in the lab? We will not be sharing our exploit. You've got a sexy video demo from me, but that's all you'll get. The Watchtower proof of concept is out and about. The Metasploit module is out and about. I've seen some other Twitter user, Wolf something with a 0 to be elite. They've shared it. If you look on the interwebs, you can track down at this point a proof of concept for your testing.
Yeah, the answer's out there if you look for it. That's all we're gonna say.
Sandbox recommendations for testing. Did we touch that already, Matt?
Sandbox recommendations for well, you've got to be more specific because that can mean a lot of things. If you're talking about in regard to the actual ScreenConnect vulnerability, there wasn't much of a sandbox. I mean, it was a Windows server with an instance of ScreenConnect. That's all we needed. If you're talking about other security testing, I mean, there's other, you know, there's automated malware sandboxes, but I'm not sure if that's the question. Oh, goodness. I love this one. How did no one find this exploit until now, considering how dead simple it was? I'm going to speak my piece on this. I don't think it's a useful conversation to be like, why didn't anyone catch this? Because we live in massive, complex systems that are in many ways more complex than any one person can ever fully comprehend, right? And when you live in giant complex systems like this, things slip through the cracks. That is just the simple. There's a quirk in .NET that allowed the pathing to be as it is, that allowed you to access the setup wizard page when you weren't supposed to. I don't think any human code review would have caught that like inevitably. I don't think any automated code review would have caught that. I'm not sure though. But it's just like, maybe what can we learn from this is a better conversation than why didn't we catch this, right? And what we can learn from this is that .NET handles pathing really weird. And what we can learn from this is that we've really got to lock down. This is not the first time that we've seen an exploit where you can access the setup page for any kind of software after it's been set up. There was a Confluence vulnerability that did this as well, right? So maybe one of the lessons here is that the class of vulnerabilities where you can access resources after, and in this case specifically the setup resources after the server has been set up, maybe that's something we need to hunt for. Maybe that's something we need to develop like heuristics for. I don't know. But all I know is that I think the more useful conversation is where do we go from here. I'm not gonna point blame at ConnectWise for letting this one slip. Things happen. Every software that has ever existed might have vulnerabilities in it. That's just the way it is. Like I don't think we're ever gonna get to the point where we're like out of vulnerabilities and they never get added. In a perfect world, people would be looking out for this stuff like during the setup of software. But I mean, we don't live in that. That's why we have jobs.
I'd love to chat with you
Yes, sir.
about that at some point, and maybe just I don't know, maybe off of a webinar. Hey, just us two shooting the breeze. But I've always wondered: is that ever a talk track? Is that ever a presentation I'd give at a B sides or an
Yeah.
RSA? Maybe a talk titled "We will never get off the treadmill because we don't want to,"
Yeah.
and like sort of fall on the sword of like I am totally a culprit, and I'll be the first to admit. Print Nightmare days, I thought I would be cool and neat and sexy to drop a sweet proof of concept out on Twitter. Here's my GitHub link. Look, I'm helping. Because I like to think, yeah, hey, cool. You can do your detection efforts, you can do your testing, you can do mitigation and validation, etc. But that also gets into some of the other conversation of, okay, we'll continue to see more vulnerabilities beaten up. Will we ever get off the treadmill? Do we want to? Because so many people.
Do we want to?
Yeah. Sorry,
rambling. No, that's an amazing conversation to have, and I think you should give that talk. Opinion on the rise of AI being leveraged for exploitation and the uptick of vulnerabilities recently. I don't know if I have a lot of opinions on this one. I think AI has a long way to go before it's going to be reliable in that regard. I think the best use case in an offensive sense for AI right now is writing like better phishing emails and some limited code review, but even that it's not infallible. I mean, every now and then we see something like there's some kind of like darknet framework that's AI exploitation or something like that, but all of those seem to kind of fizzle out in a sense. So I'm not sure myself.
Spicy one in the lion's den. Do you think a web root could have prevented this attack? I'll dismiss that question. I think Huntress, we're doing our best to do what we can do.
Yeah.
And I'll politely walk that line again.
Yeah. I don't know. No comment. Sorry. Did you say the plan was to release an update to list all remote access software and RMM installed on any agents? I don't know what the plan is. We added those slides about a situational awareness for RMMs and rats. We added that about 10 minutes before showtime. So unless you got something to add, John, I mean, I'm just saying we don't know.
I will say that our innovation thus far has been laser focused on ScreenConnect just because of this emerging risk and threat. I'd like to sprinkle in, for the longest time we've wanted Huntress. We know and we want app auditing or application sort of inventory as to what's normal. What is the baseline in your environment? So if your RMM is ScreenConnect or if it's something different, it'd be cool if we had a collective understanding and be smart on what is normal versus not normal in our partner environments. Whether we say that's an updated list to list all of those things in different software, that is a thing that we're driving towards. So I'll say that this ScreenConnect innovation has been the building blocks for what we'll call app auditing or something like that name when the time comes. So we're still right there with you.
Yeah. Timeline on network insights feature and Defender for endpoint integration. Nothing. So that's not at least my particular product area of expertise. But I would ask if you were to follow up with if you're a Huntress partner, if you follow up with your channel manager or your sales manager, they could probably get you a better answer than that. I don't think I have much of an answer for that right now. I'm not in that world in terms of that product.
Gentle reminder, huge thanks for everyone still hanging out with us. It blows
Yeah,
my
yeah,
mind. We're almost at like 200 folks. When I know it's a little bit of the crickets, I know it's a little bit of the dead air as we're sifting through your questions, but I really hope you enjoyed hanging out with us and there was some good insight. We'll keep cruising until you are running out of fumes here, Matt.
yeah. Oh, I'm good, man. I can do
Okay.
this all day like it ain't nothing, like T-Pain said. Um, Answered that one. That's good. Um, I got a question for you, John. How you doing, man?
So I'm good. There's a certain amount of like weird guilt and shame because it has become a perspective that I work a lot. And I don't mean to just be like a D-bag about that, but it's just balanced because I like to get education and content out. So YouTube as this other amorphous thing that pulls at my obligations and time and responsibilities. This week is just a little bit slammed with the content because I'd like to get a whole lot of things out every single day of the week. But chasing ScreenConnect all of last week has been the balancing act
Mhm.
of time and efforts and family and social life and enjoying a weekend. So,
Yep.
we all know it's just the balance of life and trying to do all the things that we want to do. But man, there just aren't enough hours in the day.
Yeah. Always giving back more than he takes. That one right there.
Hey, again, I didn't want it to be cheesy, but I appreciate the kind words.
What would you estimate the overall time was from initial notification and discovery to the Huntress improvised patch? Is an interesting question. I know you were in the room when it happened, John. So let's roll it back. 6:30, we'll call it PM, February 19th. Patch probably went live. Well, let's check the timeline because I have the timeline right here. Loading. One moment, please. The hotfix was deployed at some point on February 20th. So we're talking within 24 hours, I would say. And then let me see. I screenshotted when you came up with that idea. So it doesn't have the timestamp. It just says 7 days ago. So let me run that down. I'll get you the answer. One
If
moment.
you hover over the 7 days, does it show you a timestamp?
Well, that's a screenshot of that. So
Yeah.
I
I'm
gotta
sorry.
go
We
run
gotta
it
go
down
find it in Slack.
in Slack itself. So yeah, just give me a second. I remember roughly where it was. Um,
Can I also say, on that note, I'll give you some top cover and air coverage while you're
mhm.
looking. Uh, it feels always a little bit weird when I try to toss out that wild idea of like, hey, can we just delete this file on all of our partner computers? Can we put this file over there or like rename it? And
Yeah,
there is a certain line to walk of, again, hate how much we tamper with your environments because there's trust and there's privacy and there's
yeah,
understanding. Look, we're offering you security and we're doing the best we can to make sure that is the best security managed in a security platform.
yeah,
So when we make the judgment call where we're going to proactively do something, we take that seriously and we want to do it for all the right reasons. So I always feel like I'm throwing caution to the wind when I ask that silly question. Are we for or against completely changing this file contents or
mhm,
renaming it to something like .nope or .huntress saved my ass?
yeah.
It's a balancing act
It's
though.
the calculus of risk in that case, right? It's the calculus of what could this prevent and what's the possible how could this go haywire, right? And that is the balance. That's a great and persistent balancing act, right? Roughly speaking, I don't know. I don't have an exact timestamp for you, but I see the chatter about the micro patch going out around, I would say, 3 p.m. on February 20th. So I want to say I can't give you like an exact time frame about when this all went out, but the chatter about rolling that out into the partner environments went down sometime around 3 p.m. like sometime in the afternoon of February 20th, I believe. Yes, February 20th.
I'm trying to type up one for Jeffrey. See a couple others. There's one that's sitting in the queue of, hey, there are vulnerable environments out there right now. Do you have any elevated response plan for new client signups via trial, etc.?
We
Look,
treat everybody the same. Like
yeah,
there's no like you don't get preferential treatment. You don't get a watered down version if you sign up with a trial. We you are a Huntress partner. It doesn't matter. Like the status of your trial does not make a difference to the detection, efficacy, and efforts that are protecting you. So um I hope that
when it
answers.
comes down to stuff hitting the fan, yeah, hey, we'll give you some extra TLC. And I don't say that as, just something to toss out there, but Huntress and Kyle has said on webinars and Tradecraft Tuesday frequently, we don't do incident response as a service. That's not a
Yep.
Huntress offering. We just try to help and give you the peace of mind because it's what we think is the right thing to do. But we understand, this is kind of an emerging thing that everyone is facing. So that's something that we're all about.
Yep.
I will push that just a little bit further and say we have done the threat hunting beyond our partner base, but across Census and Shodan to see just what else is out there on the internet that needs a little bit more messaging and the slap in the face to like go patch this thing right now.
Yeah.
And again, those are the things that we've tried to help communicate with some of the other big top dog government, military, government agency bodies. And we've been making those calls just as well. There
Yep.
is an incredible screenshot, and oh goodness, I so wish I prepared this for you. There's a beautiful, like heartwarming screenshot of one of those individuals that has no idea what Huntress is, who we even are. And there wasn't a sales pitch. It was just like, hey, we really want you to dig into this because this is important. And their response was just like, wow, this is great. So that if I may say, an elevated response plan to vulnerable environments out there. It's not just us. It's not just you all on the call. Truthfully, the people that aren't listening in to this webinar and spending time with us are the ones that need that extra love TLC too.
Yep.
So yeah, bigger community, bigger family here. Rising tide raises all ships. You know the drill.
I misinterpreted that. I didn't realize they were asking about it like an IR response plan, which yeah, of course we don't do. But
Well, hey, it totally varies, but yeah, the interesting nuance on that question. Look, we're
yeah,
here to help the best we can.
we threat hunt like it's going out of style, but we don't do like specific like chain of custody IR related stuff. Anything in particular you're excited about in terms of the added capability with the Mac OS EDR rollout? That it exists. That's so cool. The idea that we can that we're developing a Mac OS EDR agent that's gonna how should I say this, be good is cool. Is that in from my experience, red teaming against Linux environments, and I know yes, FreeBSD kind of spinoff, whatever. Yeah. Red teaming against Nix OS environments is always easier than doing it against Windows because the EDRs available for the Nix-like OSs are not as robust. So it's very cool. And again, like I said, Mac scares me. So we've got some absolutely amazing wizard researchers on staff to take care of that. Yeah, I mean, well, we've already. I don't think it's I don't think we need to do any closing remarks. I think we've already done enough closing remarks in the body of the actual presentation here. But I want to say thank you to everybody that came through and hung out with us. Specifically, thank you to my team. Just absolutely, just like really awesome to watch this one unfold and see everybody kind of like just firing on all cylinders. And let's keep up the fight. Let's wait to the next one, I guess.
The
And
next lap on the treadmill.
yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much, everybody.